One, 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 two, 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 three, 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 four, 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 five, five, five. So the combination is one, two, three, four, five. That's the stupidest combination I've ever heard of in my life. That's the kind of thing an idiot would have on his luggage. Welcome to Hey Guys Podcast. I'm Rob, that's Liam, and this week we watched Spaceballs. The answer to the question, what if Star Wars was Jewish?
That's exactly what it is. You probably won't find that on Wikipedia and IMDb, but yeah, that's exactly what it fucking is.
Is Spaceballs a tale of how parodies should be made? It's not overbearing, there's funny jokes and spot-on references that we will remember and that actually hold up today. The plot is ludicrous, and not ludicrous speed, but in a good way. The characters are spot on with the takes of their real counterparts, and all in all, it's just a fun ride. Plus, a Winnebago with wings. Ah, the Winnebago. Only thing they seem to be good for, flying in outer space or cooking meth. Spaceballs blips along at a brisk 90 minutes, with what feels like a joke a minute. I mean, the pacing isn't hard to understand when you think that the plot is basically to steal air, mountaintops, and trees from a planet with a giant robot made. Rick Moranis' Dark Helmet is brilliant in this, the epitome of little man syndrome. Whilst watching this film, I was worried we might have trouble breaking it down, but the film seems like one of our reviews anyway. It goes everywhere in no linear fashion whatsoever. So come on, join us as we break down Spaceballs and see if this actually holds up a mere 37 years after it was released. Oh, and finally, I will not be greeting everybody. I will now be greeting everybody like the Spaceballs greet each other. I mean, next time I see you, Liam, you're getting a fist in the air.
Well, it's a weird film, like you said, because on the one hand, structurally, it's almost just Star Wars. It's almost just A New Hope. Yeah. Obviously, they vacuum things up at the end and stuff like that. But at the same time, like, this movie is patchy. It's always been patchy, and that's true of nearly every parody ever made. Make no mistake. There are very few parodies where like, oh, that's a great movie. The smart move that this movie makes, and the reason that it probably holds up better than most, is that it keeps the emphasis on Star Wars. Now, there's an element of luck with that, because Star Wars, nearly every reference in this film still holds up 37 years later, because everything is still, even the stuff, because, if 90% of this film is, say, Star Wars, the other bit is Star Trek, Alien, 2001, Wizard of Oz, Planet of the Apes. All that stuff is like now. All those, literally, there's a new Wizard of Oz movie this year. There's a new Alien movie this year. There's a new Star Trek TV show. There's just been a new Planet of the Apes movie. This film is unbelievably relevant for a movie made in 1987. The only thing that maybe stands out as being quote unquote old fashioned is Vinny with Pizza the Hut, which is clearly a take on Max Headroom from the 80s. That's the only thing. If you showed this to a kid now, he'd be like, I don't get Vinny with the whole Pizza the Hut thing. But other than that, I think nearly everything is relevant, which is insane. And again, it's probably the reason that this film has become, I think it's fair to say, Mel Brooks' most famous film. I mean, movie buffs might say the producers, but when you think of his parodies, like the big hits, the ones that are critically revered are like Young Frankenstein. What was the other one?
Blazing Saddles.
Blazing Saddles. The story of whatever, history part 1, whatever it's called.
Oh yeah, the history of the world part 1.
That's the one. Yeah. But those films, like, they've just kind of aged out in the same way. I remember growing up, Airplane was kind of considered the greatest comedy of all time. If you go back and watch that now, a lot of it just doesn't work because the references are so out of touch.
But what has been really lucky for Spaceballs, as you've already said, is the fact that Star Wars, Star Trek, all of them have never left our, pardon the pun, solar system. They've never left.
If anything, they've come back more, like, it's easy to forget because Star Wars did disappear after Return of the Jedi. There wasn't anything Star Wars, basically. There was like the fucking Endor straight to VHS movies. But other than that, there was basically nothing until 1997 when they did the re-releases. Now it's just because it's been like almost non-stop since then, because we had the prequels, then Disney, blah, blah, blah. But there was a period where Spaceballs probably became less relevant because Star Wars wasn't relevant anymore. But yeah, since 97, Star Wars has been fucking non-stop. And now it's more prevalent than ever, arguably, with all the TV shows and stuff. So yeah, it's such a weird thing to go back and... Because I always say, and it's maybe one of the reasons that we've not done very many comedies on this podcast, is because generally speaking, comedies don't age particularly well. If
Yeah,
you
you
remove
had the laugh when you.
nostalgia,
Yeah, sorry, you had the laugh when you first watched them, but when you get
Mhm,
into them and they just become, I don't know, boring to a point because you've already had all the laughs. And for me, it's the same with horror. Once you get those jump scares out of the way, unless you got a really good story
mhm.
for the horror, they're not really worth revisiting again. There's not many horrors I'd like to revisit,
Mhm.
and I find the same
I,
with comedies.
I see what you mean. I think there can be an element of like comfort with watching comedies, and in that you know what's coming. And I think certainly with the best comedies, they become quotable, so they get a second life almost with your friends. You know, when I think of like Anchorman and Zoolander and stuff like that, I
Mm.
know they're not your favorite kind of comedies, but certainly for my age group, and the same with like old school and later on with the Apatow movies, a big part of it was just you would quote it with your friends, and that's how it became got a second life. And I think that's true to this to a certain extent. But again, I think the reason you can go back and rewatch it and still enjoy it as a movie is because structurally, again, it's just Star Wars. So it's just like
Yeah,
it's almost like a warm hug of a movie rather than being genuinely kind of laugh out loud, I think.
and the good thing about this is the references. You can pick up
Mm-hmm.
on the references over and over, and they're enjoyable to the point. What I found, and not troubling, but what I found strange about this film was usually what we do is we don't pick the film apart, but we analyze the film. We talk about the film, what worked, what didn't work. The problem with a parody is that the parts that didn't work were they scripted not to work. Like because it's a parody, because it's
Mm-hmm.
a piss take, you
Mm-hmm.
don't know what was meant to land and what wasn't in regards
Mm-hmm.
to
Or
this
in
type of
terms of
film.
like a narration, like it's a narrative or a structure for a
Yeah,
movie.
yeah,
I mean, when I approach this, I almost find that like irrelevance. Like the fact that it's Star Wars just means it's easy to follow, kind of thing. I like with most comedies, what I really base my kind of like judgment of this film on, certainly revisiting it, is the laugh count. And it doesn't have to be laugh out loud because I've seen this film a lot of the time, but how many of the jokes work? And make no mistake, it doesn't all work. There are a lot of very dodgy side gags in this. I actually think John Candy is massively underutilized as Barf. I don't think all his stuff's great. I don't even think Bull Pullman is actually particularly fan. Basically, all I want to see, everything with Dark Helmet is
Dark
gold.
Helmet, yeah, and
Let's not fuck around. Every scene with Rick Moranis in this film is still brilliant to this day,
I
and I think it's always been that case. I think the stuff with Bill Pullman and John Candy wasn't great in '87. It's not terrible, but it's not great then, and it's not great now. The stuff with Rick Moranis was amazing in '87, and it's still fantastic now.
that's right because his screen time is probably on par or more than you get with Bill Pullman. Bill
Mm-hmm.
Pullman, you see more of Dark Helmet than you
Mm-hmm.
do of any of the others because they've realized up to the point that he is the one that's going to sell this movie, and I totally agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
I would want more of that. Like I said,
Well,
he's doing a great job. But do you know what I didn't get?
mm-hmm.
And I am really upset that all right, I haven't seen this film for years.
Mm-hmm.
But Colonel Sanders, it totally passed me by the first time.
Well, it's
That's
interesting because I made a list here of jokes I never got when I was younger. Because again, I've not revisited this for a long time. And you made that joke at the start about what if Star Wars were Jewish. I never realized there were so many Jewish jokes, which I think would raise a lot of eyebrows now. But it's directed and written by Mel Brooks.
and
You
starring a
can't
lot of Jewish people.
exactly. So it's
Yeah,
all kind of self-referential, whatever you want to call it. But it's like all we need a Jewish princess. Funny, she doesn't look Jewish. I mean, he looks right down the camera when he delivers that. I never really got that, but like I said, there's loads of those. There's a Kafka reference for there's a technician in charge of metamorphosis called Kafka, and it's
yeah.
just like that's a pretty highbrow joke in an otherwise really dopey film. Wayne Wilson as Trucker in Cap, where he's like, "Water my ass, get this guy some Pepto Bismol." I didn't know what Pepto Bismol was my entire life. I'm just like, I wonder what he's going for. But I think there was even one bit with him because this is the John Hurt sequence right at the end
Yeah,
when he's reprising
yeah.
his role as Kane. He tells a little story, and it's basically to mirror what happened in Alien. And when I was younger, I could just never hear what he was actually saying. So he was like, Harriet starts feeling around on all the trees, and he says, "I got it. We on Pluto." And we said, "Harry, how can you tell?" And he said, "From the bark, you dummies, from the bark." And for some reason, I just couldn't hear what he was saying. So all the time everyone's laughing, I was like, I don't get the joke. And you know, as soon as you watch it again, you're like, from the park. It's so obvious. But dumbass me as a kid just never got that fucking sequence for some reason.
The other one was Prince Valium, the
Yeah,
narcoleptic prince. Of course he's fucking falling asleep. His name's Prince Valium.
of course he is. But that's the thing. When I was younger, I wasn't interested in Valium jokes. I wasn't interested in, I don't know, Jewish jokes. What I was interested in, and certainly when I was younger, what I considered maybe the greatest cameo of all time with Michael Winslow as the radar
Yeah.
technician. I'm not sure it's as funny today, but when I was younger, that was like the best sequence in the film. I fucking love with where he does the sound effects, the beeps, the sweeps, and the creeps and all that jazz. The
Yeah.
radar being jammed.
I
I
still
fucking
love
love
that.
that
We're
stuff.
gonna jam it. Let's
Yeah, I mean it's so on the
Raspberry.
nose,
That's
but it's quite
definitely
funny.
Lone Star. Like everything about it is yeah, like you said, it's insane, but it's so funny. I
And there
still
are some
loved it.
other
Like,
good, in terms of cameos. I never realized, and again, one of those kind of famous scenes which is totally lived on and has turned into a million gifs when they're combing the desert and he's got like the tiny little brush.
yeah.
Like, we ain't found shit. That is the guy who delivers that line is Tim Russ, or more famously, and this is a nerdy response. It was Tuvok from Voyager. I'm not sure if you ever watched Star Trek Voyager,
No.
but I used to watch Star Trek Voyager all the time back in the day, and I was amazed to hear that was him. But
But the
yeah, I thought that
fact
was pretty.
they gave those two an Afro pick to comb the desert with.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not fucking happening, is it?
But well, going back to the Michael Winslow one, I loved as
Mhm.
well when he does the microphone first and he goes, sure, sure. And when we take the microphone off him, he's still going, he just
I
rips it
mean,
off the wall and chucks it.
he's one of those guys where obviously, if you were watching like, there were like adult jokes and things like, was it Police Academy, which he was most
Yeah.
famous for. But again, and I'm not saying it was the same for you, but when I was younger, Michael Winslow was the star of the show with the voice. But I tell you what, I went to see him live up in Edinburgh, and seeing him do that in the flesh is unfucking believable. When he basically does like a one-man Jimi Hendrix show where he's
Yeah.
doing the guitar and he's
And he
doing
does
like
the
the
amp and
feedback, and
yeah.
it's like I cannot believe. And you know his shtick. I've seen it in all these movies back in the 80s. But seeing it for real, like on the stage, I'm like, I literally cannot believe that sound is coming out of that fucking guy's mouth. So yeah. If you get the chance, the show's not. He's not a natural comedian. He's just got obviously this amazing gift. But over like an hour for a show, yeah, it's totally fucking dope.
The other thing that made me laugh, going straight into the middle of this, is when President Scrooge's guys caught our four heroes.
Mhm.
And like you got Stephen Tobolowsky going doing his best SS. You thought you could get away from us, and it turns out to be their stunt doubles. And you
Mhm.
saw like the guy who was meant to be Lone Star looking like a budget Patrick Swayze,
Yeah, yeah.
and you had like white Danny Trejo as the princess.
Mhm, mhm,
Was
mhm.
absolutely and I pissed myself laughing again. I'm not too sure why, but
But that's the thing. It's weird, and that is the thing with comedy in particular. I think especially something like this, which like parodies are inherently broad. It's almost hard to be judgmental of other people's tastes. So it's like if we're so say I'm being critical of other jokes because I don't think all the jokes in this movie work, but the ones I think don't work, you might think are fantastic. But even saying that, I do think there's like a number of scenes which have totally stood the test of time because the movie itself, as I said, is quite patchy.
yeah,
But the big scenes still hold up to this day. There's a reason I would put this amongst like the better parodies because parodies are inherently maybe the sketchiest genre in all of cinema because a bad parody is a fucking tough watch, man. It really is. Like they are
yeah.
some of the worst movies ever. When I think of like certainly, I mentioned the Mel Brooks ones in the 70s, going right up to Airplane, which I always think of as 70s film, because even when I was growing up, Airplane felt old. For our generation, I think it's fair to say the top tier ones were Naked Gun. Was it Loaded Weapon with Emilio Estevez?
Loaded. I fucking loved Loaded Weapon.
Yeah, I remember you saying you're a big fan of that.
Yeah,
Sorry, Airplane. I've always said that. And Hot Shots was the big one for me.
yeah,
I. It's weird because I think growing up, I preferred Naked Gun and Hot Shots, but I don't think those two films have aged as well as this. Although you can make an
it's been
argument
a
for Hot
long time.
Shots that because Top Gun has come back round and Rambo never really disappeared, they're probably still pretty relevant themselves.
Been a long time since I've seen them. But you can argue as well, like Last Action Hero was a parody, but
It's a different beast. So that
but it is
movie's
still a parody.
meta.
I mean, it is still yeah. but it's still a parody of action films or Schwarzenegger action films. So
No, I would say the difference with those is it is. I agree with you. It is parodying action films, but structurally, it's not a parody.
I
That
mean,
sounds a little bit douchey, but I really think there is a difference between something like The Last Action Hero, which is structurally this meta action film which parodies other films, whereas these, if you go back and rewatch them, especially something like this, it is just a straight up parody where the
yeah,
structure of the film is almost irrelevant, I think
I
is the
suppose. Yeah,
difference.
I get
As
what
long
you're
as, like I
saying.
said, the big emphasis here is like, if the jokes land, nothing else really fucking matters. Whereas
What
Last Action
ruined
Hero has to work as a movie.
what ruined parodies
Mhm.
was Scary Movie onwards. All of a sudden, then they just became fucking ridiculous. All the parodies after that. That's when you had like Epic Movie and that Meet the Spartans and things like that. They're just awful. But the original
Mhm.
90s before parodies, Naked Gun, Hot Shots, you just said them. From my memory, they're great. Like you said, they might not hold up. I haven't seen Hot Shots for fucking years. I haven't
Yeah.
seen Loaded Weapon for years. Robin Hood, Men in Tights.
That's
I
not the
still
Mel
think
Brooks one.
yeah, I
Yeah.
still think in my mind that's fantastic. Whether or not I go back and think the same,
I don't think that was ever
I
particularly
mean,
fantastic. It has its moments, but it's not
oh,
fantastic.
mate, much better than Prince of Thieves. Uh,
I mean,
but
you could argue that's a parody to one extent or another, I suppose.
but we will
Um,
like. There's a couple we will cover. We will do Naked Gun at some point. We will do
yeah, I'd love to. Well, I think we'll wait for the remake to come out. But
yeah.
it's
We will
interesting
do
you
Men in
mention that.
Tights. We will do Hot Shots. But going back to this, I think is still
Mhm.
it's very enjoyable. It is
Yeah,
a
it is.
very enjoyable film. But like I said in my intro, the plot means nothing. Obviously,
Mhm.
it's a piss take of a plot, but it serves to give you the gags. That like cannon and air thing that was canned in Druidia, I
Mhm.
thought was a great little sight gag
Mhm.
where he's
Mhm.
just sniffing air. You know the Scotty doing the beaming you, but he's just next door.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
There's a whole bunch of them, but that's what I mean. It's like I think the reason it lasts though is because of those bigger scenes. Like there are a bunch of like individual jokes which will land for some but won't for others. But I've listed like 8 scenes which I think come together which fundamentally make the film. So they're not, like you said earlier, they don't work in that kind of structural narrative way. They're just kind of like non sequiturs almost, just about linked together by this vaguely Star Trek structure. But I think like the ludicrous speed,
yeah,
shouldn't you buckle up? Buckle this ludicrous speed, go. It's like that scene, you could just watch it in and of itself. It's the same. We already mentioned the radar jammed, and even like right after that, there's the bit with the assholes. Like, where'd you get these guys? It's like, I told you to shoot across her nose, not up it. Where'd you get these assholes? And like the whole thing about he's major assholes. They're all assholes. Like, keep firing assholes. That's all good stuff. The Spaceballs, the movie, like I legitimately think that is a genius sequence. Like a lot of this stuff is quite dumb. It's funny, but it's dumb. The sequence with the VHS tape where they have Spaceballs the video,
yeah,
and he's like, what the hell am I looking at? You're looking at now. What you're seeing now is now. Like that sequence, I think, is one of the great parody sequences of all time. Because I think it's just fundamentally incredibly well put together. And as we already mentioned, what it has, and we'll get to the other sequences in a moment, what that sequence has, above all else, is Rick Moranis. Now, we already mentioned the fact that Bill Pullman, like he gets as much screen time as Bill Pullman, and it's the reason is he's the star. Like they initially wanted, or Mel Brooks specifically wanted, Tom Cruise or Tom Hanks for Lone Star, and they both turned him down. And I'll be interested to know which one you prefer, but I think I know the answer. But when he realized that those guys turned him down, he got Rick Moranis and John Candy, and those guys were massive stars. Rick Moranis is probably the biggest star in the movie in '88, so he's coming off like Ghostbusters in '84, Little Shop of Horrors, even Strange Brew, which isn't a thing we're aware of, but is really big in Canada and
love Strange Brew.
where it's like two guys, him and his friend. I can't remember
Yeah, I
the
love
other
it.
actor's
I
name.
love Strange
Oh,
Brew.
you know it.
Yeah,
I was surprised. I thought you'd love it straight. Didn't they do a Strange Brew movie where they go to like a haunted house? Am I making that up?
they did a Strange Brew movie. Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't think it
yeah.
was it was a haunted brewery. I think
Oh, maybe it was
because
that. Yeah, I've
yeah,
never seen it.
there's a really famous actor who is the head the brew maker. But
Sure,
what are you
let's go
if
with
you
that.
yeah the
The
head
head of
brewer,
brewing. Yeah.
the head of brewing? Yeah, that was in 1983. Strange Brew,
Hmm.
the movie. Oh, who the fuck? So Dave Thomas was the other guy. in there.
Mhm.
I'm trying. Max von Sydow. Max von Sydow was the brewmeister. That was him.
Cool. But that's the thing, because they're so Canadian and so much of their shit, like it was based on a TV show, very much a kind of a progenitor to Wayne's World in many respects, where they
Yeah.
sit around and their thing is like they're into hockey and they're just super Canadian. And when you go over, if you've been over to Canada, like especially as I went further east and you go towards like Ottawa and places like that and Quebec, you suddenly notice their faces pop up on more and more cheese shirts and more merch. So it's clearly still a thing over there. But yeah, he was a big star going into this, and obviously John Candy was to a certain extent. So they went, well, we can get a unknown for Lone Star. And Bill Pullman had never even seen Star Wars before, and they actually saw him on a stage show and just said, oh, let's get him to play Lone Star. And he's fine in that way that Bill Pullman is kind of fine in everything that he's in. But make no mistake, he is no fucking Tom Cruise or Tom Hanks. Now, I actually think Tom Hanks would have been amazing in this. In like, you got to think 1987. That was like,
Yeah, he's just coming off Bachelor Party, and
yeah,
yeah,
I think he would have been great for this. Bill Pullman is fine, but there's a reason, and I'm glad of how it worked out, because the emphasis basically moves to Rick Moranis as Dark Helmet, and I think he is one of the great comedy performances of all time. I think he's that good. The joke of him getting exasperated and him flicking up his mask and the noise it makes, it's never not funny. It's like every time he's trying to be serious and he flips the mask. What the hell's going on? It's just always good. It's always.
But that's it, though, isn't it? The heroes in this are relatively boring.
Yeah,
because I think that's what they're trying to say. They're boring. They're hired to do a job, and that's fine. But the more interesting part are the villains. Mel Brooks as President Scrooge is absolutely fantastic in this. He's so good in this.
Why didn't someone tell me my ass is so big? It's like, it's so stupid, but it's good.
I mean, yeah, let's not go for the fact apparently it was only his head was turned around, but his arms were the right way to touch his ass.
Yeah,
but okay.
It's fucking weird, right?
Yeah. George Weiner as Colonel Sanders. Like I said, I never got the chicken joke until they basically spoon fed it to me. Colonel Sanders, what is it, Colonel Sanders? Chicken? Like, oh yeah, okay, I get it.
I actually think his brief, like almost chicken impression is really good.
Yeah, but like, everything that like Colonel Sanders does, because his whole shtick is just to like shout at things and be, sir, we got to do this, sir, we got like. But I think he's fucking great in this. I think he's really good.
He plays the straight guy so well. Like even again to bring it back to the VHS scene where it's like fast forward, prepare fast forward, and they're just shouting each other. It's all gold, but you need that straight guy to play against Rick Moranis, who is ludicrous in this film, no pun intended.
To the point. Sorry, to the point, like you said, where I did my quote 1, 1, 2, 2, 3. That again is brilliant. Where you've just got Dick Van Patten as King Roland giving her out, and you don't need the other two to repeat them, but they do anyway.
It's very kind of Austin Powers-esque, isn't it? Kind of thing.
Yeah. Or it felt to me like a Galaxy Quest kind of took it from this, didn't it? Where Sigourney Weaver just copies the computer. I have one job and I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, well, that is the thing. Like beyond the fact, like this isn't quite. If this taken to its most extreme kind of like one end of the spectrum is basically what Family Guy did with Blue Harvest. Now I'm not sure if you ever saw Blue Harvest.
Yeah, I see Blue Harvest. Yeah.
I know you're not a Star Wars guy, but those are almost shot for shot recreations with just jokes kind of jabbed in. This doesn't go that far down, and it does leave room for other references. And we mentioned the fact that there's a very unsubtle Planet of the Apes reference. There's a relative with yogurt. It's clearly a very unsubtle Wizard of Oz reference. But I like the fact that it does leave room
for a Yoda reference, mind.
What's that?
And a Yoda reference.
Oh yeah, of course. That's a Yoda.
Okay. Sorry, I thought I missed something then.
No. I was just talking about in terms of outside of Star Wars, the fact that it leaves room to kind of lightly rib just the genre in general, because that's what those are. Those are genre jokes rather than Star Wars jokes. But yeah, to bring it back around to yoga, I mean that's another one of the scenes I've got listed down. The merchandising joke there, merchandiser. I'm not sure if I never realized just how important that joke was to the story of the film.
You get it now. So I was going to say,
please go for it.
So the reason why he threw it in there is because George Lucas loved everything about Spaceballs, and he said, yeah, you can parody Star Wars as much as you want, but no merchandising from this film, no toys, no nothing. So he's like, yeah, that's fine. So he chucked it all in the film, which I thought was brilliant. We got things like
the flamethrower.
the flamethrower for kids, or the sugar, the cereal that's 100% sugar. Like,
Did you notice? I'd never noticed before. Spaceballs, the comic book,
yeah,
it's just Optimus Prime on the
yeah,
front. I
yeah. I had
never
that written
noticed. I
down.
was just like, that's just a Transformers comic
But I
with
love
just
because it's called
Spaceballs written on top.
Spaceballs the movie. Spaceballs the T-shirt, Spaceballs the lunchbox. Like it even
Yeah,
had
yeah,
on the
yeah.
T-shirt Spaceballs the T-shirt. I
Which
thought that
is
was
so cool.
brilliant.
But it's weird that I never noticed. It just never dawned on me when I was younger. I was like, where was the merchandising for this film? And obviously, there's a very good reason for it.
Yeah,
But yeah, when I was younger, I just never questioned. And maybe it's because the movie made a joke about it with the whole flamethrower and all that. You're like, well, of course, there's not going to be any merchandising for this. But it would have made sense for them to have figures. Supposedly, Mel Brooks has still got his yogurt figure from the film because when you see Dark Helmet playing with his dolls, as they refer to, and I'm sure you and I would suggest that they're action figures rather than dolls, of course. The figures are actually pretty cool, and that's the one bit of merchandise that still exists. Supposedly, is he still has his yogurt figure? But yeah, that's another fantastic sequence, which again isn't funny because of Lone Star, Princess Vespa, or even John Candy. Sadly, it's funny because Mel Brooks is funny. I'm not sure about the whole fucking the Jawas and they're singing. I get it; it's a bit on the nose. It's not one of my favorite bits of the film, but the rest, the merchandising sequence is fucking gold. And if anything, like so much of this film, it feels more on the nose today than it did even in 1987.
what I did like, again going back to Jewish, was the Jewish force. You have the Schwartz.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a silly joke, but if you speak to people who've seen this film like nearly 40 years later, everybody remembers the Schwartz.
Yeah, and I love the little line. I see a Schwartz as big as mine, but do you know how to use it? And
So
I
good.
hate it when I get my Schwartz twisted, like those little jokes. And like it's
Well,
on a
even
ring.
like that's their kind of showdown, isn't it? Like I always, the one thing I always remember, I've used so many times, like I am your father's brother's sister's former roommate. Well, what does that make us? Absolutely nothing, which is what you're about to be. And even like the line just after, which I totally forgot about, but is absolute gold. Now you see, Lone Star, that evil will always prevail because good is dumb. It's like, why does that work for me? You know, like we're mentioning like jokes that work for us in the film, and I couldn't explain to you why Rick Moranis saying good is dumb works for me, but it fucking does.
There you go.
37 years later, it's still hilarious to me.
Because the one that worked for me is when he cuts up the sound technician guy. He did it, and then as he says he did it, he knows Lone Star is going to try and hit him with his ring sword, so he just holds up his ring sword to to try and just stop it.
It's so silly. The whole film is pretty dumb. And just to be clear, I want to make it because I feel like when people rewatch these films, or if they're writing reviews or whatever, one of the things that really drives me up the wall is people go, "Oh my god, I was laughing out loud. I was rolling around laughing. It was hysterical." Just be clear, when you rewatch this film, it's none of those things. It's not. It's just pleasant. I smiled a lot when I watched it, which is more than enough for a parody from 1987. You know, I didn't, there were very few bits where I was kind of howling laughing or anything like that. I just watched it, but nearly the whole film, even this, and I think it's important because the film is so charming and the cast is so good, and especially Rick Moranis, even the stuff which doesn't work, I still found oddly charming. Like
Yeah,
they did the whole fucking the stickers on the back of vehicles. They must have run that joke. It feels like they ran that joke 7 times. They probably did it twice. It's not particularly funny. I still found it kind of amusing.
and I'm with you. You had a chuckle. I said like, I pissed myself laughing. Yeah, not pissed myself laughing. I had a
No,
chuckle.
yeah,
I had
yeah,
a smile.
totally, yeah.
But the things that I actually did laugh out loud. There was twice, and it must be me and my stupid head. They were both to do with Barf's tail. Like
Oh, he just
when
keeps
he
hitting him in
keep
the face.
when he keeps turning and hitting Lone Star in the face, I thought was funny. But then
Mhm,
when his tail starts going up that woman's dress at the end, and he
mhm.
goes, "Sorry, it's got a mind of its own," and then he starts acting like a dog, going, "Hey,"
Yeah, it's it's
that
it's
was
it's just
fucking great.
but that's the thing. It's not an inherently funny joke, but I think because John Candy is so talented, he sells it. And actually, the animatronics, they had people walking around with him. It wasn't easy for them to do the tail and for
Yeah,
them to do the ears because those were controlled independently. He makes those jokes. I just think it's a shame that he didn't have more to work with because Rick Moranis has given all the best lines in this movie. Obviously, don't get me wrong, a big part of it is that he delivers on those lines. I just wish there may be
yeah, but
more of it, but I guess he's inherently the sidekick and all that jazz.
Barf wasn't written for John Candy, was it? John Candy got it on the back of
Mhm.
Rick Moranis. Rick Moranis was the one who said, "Oh, John Candy should be in this film as well."
Oh,
So
I see. I see. I
yeah,
see. I
so
didn't know that.
it wasn't written for John Candy because
That
I'm
makes
pretty
more
sure if it
sense.
was written for him or he was part of it beforehand,
Mhm.
you'd have a lot more John Candy standing
Yeah,
out.
that makes
But
sense.
because
Yeah.
he was just brought into it, he was already brought into a role that was already written, and there's
Mhm,
not much
mhm.
you can do to make it your own. Then when you're
Yeah,
in
he makes
a
it.
film that's just full of jokes, so
Yeah, he makes it like inherently charming because he's an inherently charming screen presence and he's finding it. But yeah, that makes total sense that the role was already written because it just felt like it's like, where's all the jokes? Why doesn't he have more to work with? And yeah, well, you've answered my question there, so congratulations. I'd be interested because when I mention the kind of famous scenes which kind of stuck in my mind with this film, we've already mentioned John Hurt reprising his role as Kane and the "Hello, my honey, hello, my dad," and the alien dances off
yeah,
screen. That was mega iconic back in the day, and it's fine. The weirdest scene, and the one of the scenes I'm never quite sure if I like it or not, is the Spaceball one Mega Maid evacuation. So it turns into Mega Maid,
yeah.
and then for most of this film, it's relatively Star Wars esque. But for like 10 minutes, they bring in that Spaceballs theme tune, which is both terrible and absolutely catchy as fuck. But it goes fully surrealist for like 5 minutes, where there's like a pizza guy, there's a bearded lady. For
There's a
some odd
bear.
reason, there's a fucking bear in the thing with President Scrooge. And it all goes pretty bonkers there for 5 minutes, even by this movie standards. And I still can't decide if I like the end of this film or if I kind of hate it, because the other side of it is it also goes surprisingly fantasy with Princess Vesper's home planet and a king, whatever his face is. And
Roland.
I'm King Ronald. And I'm just not sure if I particularly like that stuff, but
I
I
mean,
think maybe just sorry, Karen.
they doubled down on that joke, didn't they? Because they did it at first. I can't remember which part it was in the film, but you get Colonel Sanders go on the radio saying things like "shut down the mall." Or when they were going ludicrous speed, I think he was like,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
"We're about
Yeah,
to
yeah.
hit the speed, so cancel the 3 o'clock show,
Oh
cancel
yeah,
this,
of
do it."
course.
And then they do it again, where he's like, "Right, evacuate the circus,
The zoo
evacuate
and all
this,
the yeah,
close."
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm with you. The only part I did like, really, and I don't know if I should have liked it, is when, again, it's a Rick Moranis thing. When he gets
Mm-hmm.
kicked out of the way by the bearded lady, and Rick Moranis is looking into the window, going, "Come back here, you fat bearded bitch." He screams at.
Yeah, it's unsurprising that every time we're trying to find something to love about this film, it comes back to Rick Moranis. But it's just one of those things. What was I going to say? Yeah, as much as one of the other things I never noticed before, as much as I quite like, I both hate and love the Spaceballs main theme. The other kind of low key main theme for this movie is actually "Raise Your Hands" by Bon Jovi, which gets played multiple times.
Yeah,
It's like that's the song that John Candy's dancing to when he's eating his dog food, like KFC or whatever. But it's like, of all the songs for them to just keep referencing is a relatively niche Bon Jovi song. But yeah, it just pops up randomly throughout this film. But it's fine. I think I mentioned it because we did Young Guns last week and we thought it had John Bon Jovi in it, but it didn't. And now this week, in a movie where you would never expect to find John Bon Jovi, there is Bon Jovi. So he's never too far away from our conversations, apparently. Very strange.
oh, what was it called? Vampires 2 Los Muertos, which starred John Bon Jovi.
Jesus Christ. Oh, what was that one where it starred John Bon Jovi and the guy who looks just like John Bon Jovi? It was like a submarine film.
Oh,
He played
U571.
yeah, he was the actor who played Baby Bear from Event Horizon. He just looks like fucking John Bon Jovi's son, and they put them both in the same movie. So fucking bizarre. One last thing I wanted to bring up before we move on. I had a massive crush on Princess Vespa when I was
I
younger.
had that written down. What did you think about her in this film?
Well, that was the thing. I was going to ask, were you, and I think I know the answer to this because you're not a big Star Wars guy, which is, again, we've hardly even mentioned the fact that you didn't like Star Wars, but you did like this. But I guess you were still aware of the structure of Star Wars because it was so
Yeah,
canon, so it almost didn't matter. But were you Team Leia or Team Vespa? And I think I was Team Vespa growing up. But yeah, I wanted to mention her, and you mentioned it in the intro. I think Lone Star's Winnebago is low key one of the great like spaceships in movie history. I fucking love that Winnebago. It's
I love
so
her as well.
classically 80s Winnebago. I love it.
They're in a galaxy far, far, far away, as they said, but
Yeah.
they know a Winnebago with wings, which makes me like, and Rocky 5,000. Like, they,
It's very strange because, as you say, they play up to the whole galaxy far, far away, but a lot of the stuff is very relevant, especially when they go back to Druidia. And the church is just a church. It's just a church. It's not even spacey. They put a couple of lights in the background, but it's just a church which looks like it's on Earth. So, and there's some other stuff where they just, I'm not sure if they're making a joke or whether they just don't care, because I think they did care because they put quite a bit of effort into the special effects. I remember there was quite a bit of fuss at the time because it was one of the first movies to use green screen. A lot of the actors thought they were going to get headaches from using it and all this other stuff. But there's a bit when Barth goes down to initially save Princess Vesper and Dot Matrix, who we've not mentioned, despite the fact that it's voiced by Joan Rivers.
Joan Rivers,
of all people.
Yeah.
But he's just cutting about in space with no mask on, nothing. He just goes from one car to the other, and then they all go up the ladder back to him. And I was like, I guess there is stuff in Star Wars to back that up. Like in Empire Strikes Back, when they end up on the asteroid, they just wear little masks.
Yeah,
they're in space. They'd all be dead.
It's the same when they fly through the maid's ears. Like there's no door to open. There's no, I was going to say space door. There's no airlock or anything for them to get in. They just fly into the maid's ears. They're in her ear canal. He gets out and goes in through the emergency exit door. So
yeah.
Again, it's the same thing. Going back, I realized
you could just abandon logic in this kind of comedy. I get it, but still, I did kind of, it was a nit worth picking, I suppose you would say.
I realized I didn't answer your question. I'm definitely Princess Vesper, Team Vesper. 100%. I had to laugh when she's got the Princess Leia buns, and
that's a pretty good joke, actually.
And then she takes them off in the headphones. I thought that was great.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, not all the visual side gags work. That is 100% one of the better ones. But and I actually quite like the Virgin alarm program to go off before you do. I was like, all right, that's actually a pretty good fucking joke. But I just want to, before we move on, I just want to mention two things with Lone Star at the end of the film. One, I just want to make it clear, he definitely killed the guy with the shaving foam. That guy drowned in shaving foam. He's dead.
Yeah.
I had never noticed it before. Without question, the most disturbing thing in this movie, when Lone Star suddenly shows up and he's magically a prince and he marries Princess Vesper, fine. When he kisses her, and it's a long kiss, he has his eyes open the entire time like a fucking lunatic. That is proper psycho killer stuff. I was just like, okay, he'll close his eyes soon. No, they kiss for like a good 6 seconds. He keeps his eyes open the entire time. I'm like, dude, that is fucking bananas as far as I'm concerned.
My question was, how did they have time to stop and get princely robes? Like, where did they stop and get princely robes?
I have no idea. The princely robes, I guess maybe because you think they were in a rush. I assume that if they landed just off-site on planet Druidia, there probably would be a shot. Maybe, I don't know, actually.
Well, no,
it doesn't make any sense.
They heard him pull over. They heard him fly over, didn't they?
No, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense, but it's not nearly as upsetting as him kissing her with his eyes open. As far as I'm concerned, that's fucking bananas. But anyway, anything else before we move on?
Yeah, two things. I think we needed more of Mel Brooks, President Scrooge's video wall woman, because she was pretty fit.
Yeah, she was pretty hot. She very much playing up to it, but yeah, she was successfully very hot.
And there was the Jewish plastic surgeon's nurse.
Oh,
randomly, that I've never noticed before. When again, a joke that passed me by as a kid. He had his golf caddy with him because they pulled him off the golf course to do this job.
Yeah, and also, again, it probably made sense when I was a kid and never really understood any of the kind of elements of, sex, for instance. But doesn't he have just his face in her boobs? I'm like, it's not really a move, is it? Just to kind of like, if she pulls the top down, just bury your face in her cleavage. I'm like, okay, I guess, whatever. If it's your thing, it's your thing. But as a grown-up, it seems stranger than ever, that's for sure. All right, so like favorite scene then? I think we're ready to jump onto that.
Yeah, I got nothing else to record. I've already said that I found most of these women hot.
Got nothing else to record. That sounds so dramatic. Like you're just going to
I got nothing else in my notes to say about the film. Yeah,
I'm all out. I don't want to talk about Spaceballs anymore. It's bullshit.
It was my choice as well.
Is it me? Oh,
I'll go. I mean, a lot of these add up, but for some reason, and it's just one line that made it my favorite scene: the comb the desert line, the comb the desert scene. It's great.
Shit.
But the reason why I love it is because, again, it's a line that I've missed previously. Mm-hmm. Do you think we're taking this too literal?
100%. Why? I never when we watched that when I was younger, same as you, it was always we ain't found shit. That was the funny line. When I rewatched it, I was like, that was the line that stood out, and I had totally forgotten about it.
Yeah,
It's like, no, you idiot! You told us to go in the desert, so that's what
yeah.
we're going to do. I think
And
because you start working as an adult, you're just like, yeah, there's a bunch of cunts who do that exact thing. They just take it too literally. This is what we have to do, and you're like, oh, for fuck's sake! All right, whatever, dude.
it's when you got an apprentice on site, isn't it? And you go, give me a skirting board ladder or, an
Yeah, yeah,
ice
yeah, yeah.
hammer or something like that. But yeah, from the desert. So, do you think we're taking this too literal? And again, for the favorite scene, Dark Helmet's got his safari outfit, which his helmet then has that window that opens up all the, instead of it sliding up, he's got a window, a door that opens up in front of him. It's brilliant.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Mine, I struggle to pick between the two, but the two, when I think of this film, there's always two scenes that stand out, and they're still the ones that stand out now, like revisiting it. One is the famous ludicrous speed sequence.
Yeah.
Like the whole buckle up, buckle this, and then ludicrous speed go, blah, blah, blah. But it probably is, and I already mentioned earlier, it's the VHS sequence. Prepared to
Nice.
fast
Yeah.
forward, insert, and the whole thing. When is this? This is now. When is then? Soon. All that shit. I think it's easily the smartest part of the film, the most well written. So that's as much as I love the ludicrous bean sequence, and I think that's probably the most famous sequence from the film. I think it's fair to say. But my favorite and the one I keep going back to, if I'm gonna like go and watch a clip from this film, it's always the VHS sequence. So I'm gonna go with that.
Cool.
Loves.
Yeah, so there's a lot to pick out for loves in this film. I mean, you could pick out the jokes, you could pick out the actors, the way it looks. I mean, what they did with space for a film like this is great. But I'm gonna go one, two, and three in no particular order. Was Rick Moranis as Dark Helmet, Mel Brooks as President Scrooge and Yogurt, and George Weiner as Colonel Sanders. I thought they were
Yeah,
brilliant together.
yeah,
So
he's
they're
all
my one,
great.
twos, and threes. I gotta go with that.
Number one, unsurprisingly, without question, is Rick Moranis' Dark Helmet, who I will, stress again, he is the star of this film, with
Yeah,
just by a country mile. Number two, it just nails the parody tone. It makes fun, but no real ill intention for the source material. I think there's a reason that George Lucas was such a big fan. It sends up Star Wars, but it does so with a love for the actual source material. I think.
yeah,
It plays fast, but also works as a movie as well, which I think is important. And that leads it into the third one, which is ability to send up sci-fi, yet retain that commitment to the Star Wars story. Like, this is still fun. And I think it's an important point because even if you don't know much about Star Wars, which you don't, you're aware of it, being a massive fan. I think for all its silliness, it still retains something of a five-act structure. So it still works as a film, but obviously the jokes are the most important thing. But
yeah.
yeah, those are my loves. How about hates?
Bill Pullman as Lone Star seemed a bit pointless in the film. The thing at the end where you're a prince, there's no reading about it. It just all seems to be thrown in. Like the ending felt very rushed to make him, and it's not rushed, is it? It's a piss take. This is what happens to these heroes. They turn out to be royalty or anything. That's what they're trying to say. But it
Yeah,
just
I just
felt,
couldn't tell if it was like, I don't think it was like a joke on purpose. He's so bland and forgettable, and that's the joke. The hero usually is bland. Like Luke Skywalker, certainly in the first film, he's kind of forgettable. There's a reason everybody prefers Han Solo, why Darth Vader steals the show and stuff. I don't think that's the intended joke here. And I don't think that joke would work if they had got Tom Cruise or Tom Hanks. This character wouldn't be bland if it was one of those two. But
yeah,
Bill Pullman, an actor who I do like, but he just has one of those faces. It's the same like in Independence Day. He's great in Independence Day, but he's also kind of bland in that. He's just got one of those faces. Sorry, Bill. Sorry, Bill.
My second one is Dick Van, not Dyke, Patton, was it? Dick Van Patten as King Roland. I just didn't like him. I didn't
I
think he
quite
was.
liked him in this.
I
I thought he was
didn't
quite
like
good.
him in this. I want to say so. I got two more. I picked three and four because my third one has been taken. I didn't really notice it, but when you pointed it out, I hate it now. Him kissing with his eyes open.
Oh, that is the
Yeah.
worst. I haven't got that down, but but that's my number four as well. Just spoiler alert.
Well, my number four is Rick Ducommun in this film. Why do I hate it? Because I hate the fact that we keep seeing Rick Ducommun in all these films, but he's never actually doing anything.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
really strange.
Who is he in this again?
He was the one of the guys that got the shit kicked out of him. He said, and his clothes were nicked.
Oh, yeah, yeah, of course, of course. He does keep popping up in these films, doesn't he? Jesus Christ, I totally forgot about
I was looking at his IMDb, right? We're going to complete this filmography. We really are.
Just by complete accident, I would like to
By
stress.
complete accident. Spaceballs, Die Hard, The Burbs, Little Monsters, The Hunt for Red October, Gremlins 2, The New Batch, The Last Boy Scout, California Man, Class Act, Groundhog Day, Loaded Weapon 1, Last Action Hero.
Yeah, that is the thing. We haven't done all those, but it feels like a lot of those are like on
So
deck.
we're going to complete
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
there are,
yeah. But no. Just to like back up your point, it's like we've already done loads, but like we wouldn't need to force the issue if we did like another 100 episodes. Like those films are almost certainly getting done.
yeah, that's what I mean. We've mentioned most of those films before that we're going to do.
Yeah, like Last
Yeah,
Action Hero, that is an absolute shoe-in. Loaded
yeah.
Weapon, almost certainly because you're such a big fan. Yeah, they're in the post, man. They're in
A
the
Little
fucking post.
Monsters is going to happen. It is going to happen.
Not over the moon about that, but fair enough. I mean, what would you do first? Little Monsters or what the fuck is it called? Cabbage Patch? No, not Garbage Pail
Garbage Pail
Kids.
Kids. I've been threatening Garbage Pail Kids longer than Little Monsters. It'd have to be Garbage
Yeah,
Pail Kids, wouldn't it?
I honestly think if I was going to watch it, I think I'd be more inclined to watch Garbage Pail Kids because I feel like there's more of a cultural thing about that film, which I just don't get. And I kind of want to, because I've never seen the film, I will admit it doesn't look appealing to me, but I've never seen it. But I know there's enough people who do have a soft spot. I'm not sure about Little Monsters if it has the same kind of appeal, but hey, maybe we'll find out. In terms of my hates, like any parody, only so much of the comedy lands. The hit rate is surprisingly good in this film, but not all the jokes work.
Yeah.
Number two, I just wish there was more Dark Helmet. Like I said, I like Bill Pullman plenty, but he's no Rick Moranis. And number three, I'm never crazy about the ending and the whole vacuum thing. It all goes like quite traditional fancy at the end, which feels slightly out of place. And as I mentioned earlier, like the whole church thing, which is just a church, it feels like they run out of budget. So I was never crazy about the end of this film, and I'm still not today. So those are my hates. And of course, number four is, as previously mentioned, Bill Pullman kissing with his fucking eyes open, which is going to haunt my fucking dreams. Do you have any alternative titles for this film?
Yeah, I didn't think how you could get better or worse than Spaceballs, but my God, some of the countries tried.
Go for it.
Argentina, SOS, there's a madman in space.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Canada, the crazy history of space.
Okay, I prefer that one. So that's the best one so far.
Denmark, Spaceballs, the Space Nuts.
That's okay. Yeah, it just sounds like a sequel, but sure.
Finland, it's spring for space.
What? What the fuck?
It's spring for space.
As in, like the season.
The season.
I mean, I kind of like it just because it's fucking bonkers. But
You want bonkers? Greece. Third type balls.
yeah, I'll give you that. That's pretty insane.
Lithuania, cosmic eggs.
Okay, yeah, that one works. That one works.
Portugal, the craziest space odyssey.
Don't.
Romania, space spheres.
Kind of losing the pun, I think, a little bit.
Slovenia.
Go with what feels right, buddy.
I do it and I get fucking shit for it. Laughter in space.
Oh, come on, guys. Slovenia, that's terrible. You got to do better than that.
Spain, the crazy story of galaxies.
Terrible.
Taiwan, interstellar trucked.
Nope.
Working title from the United States. We never do working titles, but I like this one. Planet Moron.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, sure.
Yep. Vietnam, Galactic Wars.
Nope.
And West Germany, Spaceballs, Mel Brooks, Crazy Space Travel.
I mean, it gets a lot in there. Based on
There's a reason the wall came down, and I'm pretty sure it's because of that.
Because of that, yeah. The two that stand out are definitely Canada and Finland. I think those are the winners for me.
What was Canada and Finland? Sorry, I gotta go back. Finland. Oh, it's spring for space, and Canada, the crazy history of space. No. Greece, third type balls.
Well, yeah, there is that as well.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you can put it on a poster, but sure. Any facts for this movie?
Yeah, we got a couple of facts. Sorry, I was just shutting my door because my son has just arrived.
That's all right. I was like, oh, do you have any facts for this film? And I'm just watching him on video, just walk the fuck away. I was like, he's doing it again. He just doesn't want to do the Spaceballs podcast.
Did you notice the Millennium Falcon?
I did not.
Yeah. So at the diner scene at the end, the Millennium Falcon is parked up in the car park or the ship park.
Fuck, have I never noticed that? No, never noticed it before. I think because you're watching that sequence, you're just waiting for John Hurt, I suppose, aren't you?
So the Millennium Falcon from the Star Wars saga makes a cameo appearance in the movie. Take a close look at the exterior shot of the space diner, and it can be spotted parked there among the other space vehicles. George Lucas got a chance to read the screenplay before production began and loved it so much that he decided to have his special effects company, Industrial Light and Magic, help make the movie.
Well, as I said, I know it's a movie from '87. It's aged to one extent or another, but the effects largely hold up.
Of all the jokes in the movie, writer, producer, and director Mel Brooks says that the two he is most proud of are the running gag about merchandising, Spaceballs,
Mhm.
the breakfast cereal, Spaceballs, the t-shirt, etc., and Colonel Sanders renting Spaceballs before it was finished.
Oh, so like the VHS joke. I think, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, those are
yeah.
those are probably, as you said, there's the Lightspeed one, but right up there is the merchandising joke. So yeah, those are definitely aged brilliantly.
You could tell this wasn't written
But
for John Candy.
just out of interest, because I think it's an age thing for me, and we already mentioned like the '80s parodies. I was quite presumptuous earlier because I don't think I asked. Did you have any attachments like those '70s parodies, like I mentioned, like Young Frankenstein, Blazing Saddles and stuff? Because I tried watching them when I was younger, but they just didn't work for me because I didn't
No,
like have any connection to the cultural
I've
references.
never seen Young Frankenstein, which now as a movie fan seems
It seems almost
like
crib. Yeah, I know what you
yeah,
mean.
yes,
But I tried
but
watching it
I've
when I was younger, but it just didn't work. But
yeah,
I'm
I think
I'm
that's the
sure I'd
problem with
find
those
something
films.
with it now. If I watched it
Yeah,
now, I'd be watching it in a different way, I suppose. But
but yeah, I've seen Blazing Saddles. Not the like it had its moments, but
Mhm.
I think I need to watch it again. I've only ever seen it once.
But I think it's the same problem because again, that one's more critically revered than this. But I think we're running into the same issue. We just those cultural references just don't have the same impact. Like we grew up in the '80s with Star Wars kids, Star Trek,
Yeah,
all that jazz. But hey, oh, sorry, just
that's right.
slip
John
that in there.
Candy ad libbed the line "That's going to leave a mark" after standing up without doing his seatbelt. During his scene, Michael Winslow did most of the sound effects, as we know. In the DVD audio commentary for the movie, Mel Brooks jokes that they saved around $1,000 by letting him do that. Contrary to rumor, that is not an uncredited Michael York playing an ape. In a 2016 talk at the National Press Club, York said that he unsuccessfully tried to get the credit off his online resumes, and has since given up on that. So people online have just said it's him, but it's not him.
Fair enough. Just take the win. Jesus Christ.
So as you've already said about John Candy's costume, the bath costume was operated by three people. John
Mhm.
Candy operated Bath's tail using a hidden control in his paw, while two assistants each controlled an ear. Candy's costume was powered by a 30-pound battery that he wore on his back.
Jesus Christ. It seems like a lot of work for a tale and to me is, but it
Yeah.
was the '80s.
The escape pod launch sequence is an unused clip from Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope, provided to Mel Brooks by Lucasfilm. So that's why it's overused. I mean, when you see it, it's the
But
same.
it is like one of the most iconic sequences from A New
Yeah.
Hope, and that is the thing. If you rewatch that film, that's one of the reasons it looks so good. It's just from Star Wars, but it does look amazing. But yeah, yeah, for good reason.
Full face mask resembling a wrinkled bulldog was originally constructed for the character Barth, but Mel Brooks quipped that if they're going to hide John Candy behind a mask, he might as well hire someone else for half the price. A nose and upper lip piece was tried next, which Candy approved, but again, Brooks did not. They finally settled on animatronic ears connected to a hairpiece, a small nose application, and a patch over one eye, just like the dog Petey from the Our Gang shorts. I'm not too sure what
Mhm.
Our Gang is, so.
No, no, all me.
Mel Brooks asked if Daphne Zuniga wanted someone else to sing the bit where Vesper is in the cell singing "Nobody Knows the Trouble I've Seen,"
Hmm?
but she insisted she could do it, and she was right.
Yeah, she knocks out the park. And I was listening when I was watching. I was like, is she definitely singing that? It's like, yeah, she is for sure.
I made the joke, but it's actually a fact. The box for Spaceballs, the breakfast cereal, says it contains 100% sugar.
Fantastic.
President, if you didn't get it, President Scrooge's name is an anagram of Mel Brooks's last name. Just in case you didn't get that.
I didn't get it.
Oh, there you go.
I did
Scrooge,
not get that. I did. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Scrooge
No, no.
Brooks.
I can see where that
Really?
was going before you finish it. It never clicked for me at all. Another one of those jokes that I never got when I watched the film. Only it was, there might be a whole bunch of other ones, but yeah, the Scrooge thing, never got it until literally now. As they would say on the internet, I was today years old when I found out that President Scrooge is an anagram of Mel Brooks. Oh, sorry, Brooks at least.
I'll give you two more. So Steve Martin was the original choice for Colonel Sanders. I think that would have been great. Steve
That
Martin
makes
and Rick
that makes
Moranis together.
that makes perfect sense. I can
Yeah.
absolutely see him in that role. I'm not saying like don't get me wrong, he was great, but yeah, Steve Martin's fucking Steve Martin, so I get it.
And a director trademark for Mel Brooks, the plug for the hypothetical sequel, Spaceballs 2, The Search for More Money.
That is
I
very
think
cool.
I think I read that they're gonna do Spaceballs 3. One of the working titles at the moment is Spaceballs 3, The Search for Spaceballs 2,
Yeah,
which I
which
think
is
would be
ace.
great.
Which
Yeah,
leads right into Hugs the Future. So this is where we ask the question, remake, sequel, let it die, or leave well alone. So as we know, and one of the reasons we're actually doing this now is because they've basically announced a sequel with 97-year-old Mel Brooks returning as producer, which is like absolutely amazing. But that is the big question. Do you call it Spaceballs 2 The Search? I think you have to call it Spaceballs 2 The Search for More Money. I know he's already hinted at Spaceballs 3 The Search for Spaceballs 2, but the sequel's name is in the original. It's a fucking layup, dude. You have to call it The Search for More Money, especially now with Star Wars and Disney being so greedy and like bleeding Star Wars dry. It's
yeah,
more relevant than ever. If they release Spaceballs 2 and it's not called The Search for More Money, as far as I'm concerned, it's a dereliction of duty. It would be an absolute fucking shocker. So do I want to see the sequel? Yes. Now, there are some caveats with that. There aren't many good comedy sequels, for one. And there aren't actually that many good legacy comedy sequels. And the ones that there are, I think of like maybe you could say Zoolander 2 or Coming to America 2. It's like, part of me is like, have we not learned these don't work? But as we mentioned previously, this is a unique beast because Star Wars and all of its cultural references are more relevant and more prevalent now than they've ever been, maybe even more so when this movie was made in 1987. So if ever there was going to be a legacy sequel, certainly to a parody, that might actually work, it's fucking Spaceballs, man. And it's become a cult. Like, this was a decent enough hit back in 87, but because of VHS and then subsequently because of the ongoing success of Star Wars and the fact that it's never really left popular culture consciousness, so I can't speak, it's become more and more of a cult hit. So yeah, I actually think Spaceballs 2 could work. If they can get back Rick Moranis. That is essential. And I cannot stress that enough. That is a set, which is the big if, as we know, because Rick Moranis hasn't worked since like fucking 2008. And even that stuff was voice work. I don't think he's been seen on camera since like the mid fucking 90s, other than maybe a few tiny cameos here and there. So, yes, getting Rick Moranis back is very tricky. If you look at his IMDb, he has one role supposedly upcoming, and it's obviously Shrunk, which is the other film we'd all love to see him in. I mean, if I found out he was going to do Shrunk and Spaceballs 2, I'd be over the moon. But if I hear Spaceballs 2 and I hear Rick Moranis isn't in it, I'm not sure if I can get motivated for it. Sorry, a bit of a rant, but I really do love Rick Moranis.
Can I go?
Go for it, buddy.
You said it. You kind of said it yourself. Legacy sequels don't work, and I'm not going to say in the most part they don't work. Coming to America 2 or whatever it was called was shite. The other one you mentioned, Zoolander 2,
terrible,
shite. Like legacy sequels do not work for the most part, let alone for comedies. So I would leave it alone on that regards. The other thing you said about Star Wars is still in the public eye, Star Trek is still in the public eye. You could make it work, but for me personally, I would probably have left it alone. Like you said,
that's fair enough.
Are they going to get Rick Moranis back? Probably not. Hopefully they do. But can Rick Moranis be as good as Rick Moranis was in 1987 as Dark Helmet? I don't know if he can. Mel Brooks is 97 years old. He's not going to do President Scrooge again. He's not going to do Yogurt again. So it's literally going to be things like Lone Star was my father. This guy was my dad. This guy. I don't think it's going to work. So I would leave it be.
I mean, don't get me wrong, everything suggests that this wouldn't work. I just think, unlike most, there's a reason to believe it could work. It does come back to the simple fact that it has to have Rick Moranis in it. But if they could get Rick Moranis, I would be interested at least because there's so much to work with. Because there's so much Star Trek. And even since then, like sci-fi, all that stuff, it's so, it's got so much material to work with that there's a potential for this to work. I do agree with you. It almost certainly will not work. But I wouldn't be devastated. But like I said, that is with the very specific caveat that Rick Moranis would have to return.
When did you say?
Maybe I just want to see him in another film.
When did you say Rick Moranis was last on screen? Was like 2008, was it?
Well, he did voice work in like the early 2000s, but I can't remember him like in a live action movie since like the 90s. I might be wrong.
I can tell you the last time he was on live action TV to a point was 2020 when some man smacked him upside the head in New York. Do you remember that? He was attacked.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's a unique thing. But if you look at his the TV movie, so they did Bob and Doug, which is the what is it? The fucking film called?
Strange Brew.
Strange Brew. So he did something for that in 2007. He did like voice work for Brother Bear 2. some other silly things. But yeah, you've got to go back for his like last really big kind of like live action role. It's like Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves in
Yeah, which was
1997.
a made for TV film.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
he's really done fuck all for like, well over like, coming up to 30 years now.
1997 was Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's been a long time, but there have been hints that he might be willing to come back. And as I said, the other major one is Shrunk, which people keep
Yeah,
talking about.
he is doing it's in pre-production, isn't it? So he is doing it.
Yeah, I'm always a little bit wary of these things when they say pre-production. Those things can disappear. There's a lot of stuff on IMDb which has been sitting there for fucking ever, and then it's just vaporware. But we shall see.
Well, I tell you what, I'm looking at the cast. Sorry,
no, go for it.
I'm looking at the cast for Shrunk, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Josh Gad, who is doing Spaceballs, so he's going to be Nick. So I wonder if that's like if they do Shrunk before Spaceballs, maybe Josh Gad's got an in then. If Rick Moranis liked working with Josh Gad,
it
you
could
bring
be
him
that.
in.
Yeah.
Rick Moranis' second build then is Wayne Zielinski.
Mm-hmm.
Eduardo Franco then is somebody called Dr. Charles Hendrickson. I do have a point, so don't worry about that. Robin Bartlett is Patty Zielinski. Fifth build then Eve Gordon Diane Zielinski. Sixth build is Bridget B, who is a porn star as a character named Corky.
Oh dear God! Well,
so she's sixth build in the Disney Channel film Shrunk.
Yeah, that's a bit of a surprising one. The only thing I'll say is all of those castings suggest that maybe it is getting off the ground because that's some very specific shit. Unless somebody's just got a little bit carried away with the editing tools, I'm
going to give you her. So her last four films, right?
Yep.
So upcoming is Shrunk. She's playing a character named Corky. Then her latest film, Anal Glory 4.
God damn. I mean, that is on the nose to say the least. That's the kind of like porn you would like reference in a movie. I didn't know they were actually just called Anal Glory 4.
Step Mom's Game.
Okay, fair enough. A little more subtle than Anal
Ask
Glory.
Your Mother.
Yeah, again, I'm a bit more on board with that.
Perv Mom. So basically, she has a niche, I'm guessing.
Yeah, the other ones sound like almost quite fun little porn parodies. Anal Glory 4 sounds a little bit more hardcore, if truth be told.
I'll give you one. So I'll go on IMDb. Monsters of Cock 79.
Monsters of Cockstep, fantastic. I
mean, I haven't seen the other 78 sequels. Do you think I need to see them, or can I just go straight into 79?
You probably jump 79. I'm sure they'll deal, just read the synopsis of the other ones. You'll have no problems there.
In between this, right, she's got a voice acting role for a TV show called Kung Fu Sock.
Kung Fu Sock?
Yeah.
Well, she certainly has an eclectic career, if nothing else, especially if she ends up actually making fucking Shrunk. But we shall see. We shall see. The jury's still out. In terms of making a change, it's easy for me. I would just make it a Dark Helmet film. That's what I'd love to see. More Rick Moranis, more Dark Helmets. Just, yeah, that'd be my major change.
Give more of a story to Lone Star, I think, because he's basically got nothing. They've put all these character traits of what the hero should be from these films into this guy, and it just seems to go nowhere. There's no story for him. So I think you need to give him a better story.
It's almost the exact opposite of what I said. I'm like, I don't give a fuck about Lone Star. I just wanted to be more Dark Helmet, but that's fine. In terms of video games, there wasn't a Spaceball video game, which is quite surprising. Maybe that's part of the merchandising deal. If I was going to make one, I would go with Eidos Montreal. They made the Guardians of the Galaxy game, and I thought that had like a good combination of kind of action and basically chat. And I would just kind of make it an unofficial sequel where they have like an uneasy alliance between Rick Moranis and Lone Star. So you get to control, say, Barth, Princess Vesper, Lone Star, and Dark Helmets. I think that'd be fucking dope.
The last Jedi Survivor games, I was thinking. I can't remember who made them. Who made them?
Respawn.
I think they were great, but they were more action orientated than you would get from Spaceballs.
It's quite hardcore to have, because those are basically Souls-likes, notoriously hardcore genre, and to make that into a Spaceballs video game.
That's what I mean. But you win with the Guardians of the Galaxy. I thought that was a brilliant game. It didn't do well, unfortunately, but I thought it was a great game.
Yeah, I actually blame Marvel for that. And I mean Marvel, the video game. The Square Enix, I think, made that one.
The Avengers game.
Yeah, not the Marvel one, the
Yeah,
Avengers game. I do
yeah,
apologize because that one bombed and that one came soon after. I think a lot of people, like at a glance, you might be like, it's the same kind of game. It wasn't at all. It was so
no.
much better than the Marvel game. And I actually didn't think the Marvel game was that bad because I didn't want to play it for 1,000 hours. So I played the story. It was fine. And then I just put it away. I didn't give a fuck about the end game or anything. I was like, I've played this for 12 hours. That's more than enough. However, saying that, Guys in the Galaxy was working on a whole different level. And a Spaceballs version of that game, I'd fucking love to see.
Yeah, that's the winner.
Ratings and recommendations. This is going to be an interesting one because I think we'll probably be in the same kind of ballpark for the actual rating, but the recommendations one is weird for this film. So I've gone for 3. Now, 3 sounds quite negative considering we've talked a lot about this. Again, I don't think all the jokes land. I don't think it's a masterpiece. I think a big part of the fact is simply because it's a parody. Parody films are inherently not amazing. I know some people disagree, and some people tell you Airplane's the greatest comedy of all time. I don't think that's true. So I'm going to say 3, a very positive 3, though. And usually I would say no, because as we mentioned previously, comedy rarely ages and, beyond nostalgia. But because this film still feels so relevant, I think it would still totally work. And like we said, even if all the jokes don't laugh, what this film is inherently, it's just charming. It's just an easy watch. It's a really pleasant 3-star watch. And I would recommend somebody go and watch this on the proviso that they have even a passing, knowledge or interest in Star Wars.
I like this. It's a 3.
Mm-hmm.
I think it wholeheartedly deserves a 3. Like you said, there's things that hit and miss with this film. So I have no doubt about it being a 3. I've got no qualms about people thinking it deserves more. If you think that, absolutely go for it.
It's
But
fair
it's
enough.
definitely
Yeah,
a
it's
3.
comedy,
Yeah.
whatever.
And I would recommend it, but for completely different reasons to what you said.
Okay, yeah.
If you didn't like Star Wars, watch this film. Because
Well, that's a good point. You don't need to like Star Wars. You just need to be aware of it. And that is the thing. You're a perfect example because you're into the genre and stuff like that. You don't like Star Wars, but you're clearly aware of it. And that's more than enough. Like everyone knows Darth Vader. Everyone knows fucking Luke Skywalker. You don't have to like the films. Like, yeah, you might, like you said, to your point, you might even like this more if you hate those fucking films.
yeah. And that's why I think that I would recommend it to people that don't like Star Wars.
And it's just in case you are interested, by the way, whether it be a rewatch or I'd be amazed if you've listened to this and you've never seen the movie before. It is currently available on Amazon Prime under the subscription, isn't it? So I didn't have to pay to watch this. Yes. I mean, you have to pay for the subscription, blah blah blah. So that's Spaceballs. We've covered it. So
that was my choice. So your choice is. I hope you've got a choice ready.
I do. The year, sir, is 1995.
Oh, moving up in the world.
We are moving up in the world.
1995.
Only randomly, a mere 29 years ago.
But randomly, I was thinking of The Specialist, where I think that was 94.
It's not The Specialist. Do you want the next one?
Yeah.
I'm not going to give you the direct. I'm certainly not going to give you the start. The tagline is "Think fast, look alive." Movie title.
It's not Last Action Hero, is it? That was 94.
That was 93 or 94.
Okay. Look alive. Think fast.
Think fast, look alive. Movie title. It obviously it doesn't say movie title. It says what the fucking movie title is.
Okay.
But
think fast, look alive. 95. Okay. No, I haven't got it.
Director John McTiernan. We've had a few times recently.
Yeah, we have. Think fast, look alive. Movie title, obviously, with John McTiernan. Death Becomes Her. No, John McTiernan didn't do that.
No, that's Robert Zemeckis, which I actually really want to do. Death Becomes, because I noticed they're actually showing it in the cinema around by me, which is kind of cool.
Well, yeah, I think they're releasing a Broadway musical, so I think it's.
Maybe that's the reason. Yeah. Maybe that's the reason. I really want to go back. See, now I'm like, I should have picked that, but no, this film's fun.
Give me a star. You got to give me a star. Otherwise, I'm not going to get it.
I'll give you one of the stars, and this one, I won't give you the star. I'll give you the next listed star as Samuel L. Jackson.
Fucking think fast, look alive. Oh, fuck me. Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Die Hard with a Vengeance, yeah, that's right. So Die Hard with a Vengeance, which, I mean, again, maybe this has changed because I'm not seeing for a while. I always considered the second best Die Hard film.
Yeah.
And, because John McTiernan famously didn't direct Die Hard 2, came back for Die Hard 3. And, it's still a Die Hard film, but it felt far enough removed. It was one of my issues with Die Hard 2, was that it just felt like, it's like Die Hard 1, but not quite as good.
That's it. You like Die Hard 1, we'll give you with the bigger place that he can't get out of, so the airport's bigger. But they thought, you know what, we'll scrap that. It's more about the character journey now, so we'll give him all of New York. And I'm with you.
And they make it a buddy movie.
1, 3, 2, 4 possibly exists. 5 definitely doesn't. So
yeah, I actually think, and I think the gap between say 2 and 4 is probably closer than what a lot of people would say, and the gap between 4 and 5 is a million miles wide. Like 4 doesn't, like for all of 4's problems, it doesn't belong in the same even conversation as 5. 4 is the problem with 4 is that it doesn't really feel like a Die Hard film. But if you just treated it as a decent mid-2000s action film starring Bruce Willis, it's pretty good.
Yeah, no, it is pretty good. And Justin Long is a decent, like,
he's surprisingly good now. Surprisingly good.
The problem that you get with that, we grew up on Die Hard.
Yeah.
Die Hard is ultra violent to a point of ultra action. And then you give us a film that's a 12A where our character then becomes a superhero that rides a jet.
That's when it starts to get.
Yeah.
It basically, that film is like for an hour, it's just good. And then it gets really silly.
But that's it. And you stick with the groundedness. John McClane was a grounded hero. He was ground level. He wasn't flying in the air. He wasn't disarming bombs until the third one. He was ground level. But in regards to Died with a Vengeance, I am so glad you picked this film. I hope when I go back to it, I still love her as much as I do. Samuel L. Jackson is, again, a perfect foil for this.
Awesome. And I seem to, they've done it in other movies, but there are a few things, because I think they did it in Children of Men as well. There are a few things that get me on board quicker than when you just have a city street and you have the credits and then a fucking building explodes. I'm just like, I'm fucking in, dude. I'm fucking in.
What a song as well, Summer in the City. Great song to start off with.
Amazing.
I mean, we're already doing a Diad of Avengers podcast.
I know. Basically, just to be clear, everything we say now, we're going to repeat next week, including one of my I'm going to love the video game section is going to be loads of fun. Loads of fun.
What I wanted, that tagline, never heard of it.
I had never heard of it either. That's why I was searching around some, because I was like, John McClane, and I thought maybe you get, but I was like, I can't give you fucking Bruce Willis. And I was let's be clear, even Samuel L. Jackson, I was like, oh, you'll get that, and you've got it very quick. But I was like, what was the tagline? I saw Think Fast, Look Alive, Die Hard. I was like, I can't remember that being a thing at all. So I was like, I'll put it in just because I was like, I'd be interested to know if you'd ever heard it before. Because I was just like, nope. Didn't get me. But anyway, so next week, Die Hard with a Vengeance, which I'm super looking forward to. Because,
can't wait for that.
Die Hard. Let's be clear, we've already said, I think everyone knows it's not as good as Die Hard, but it's still a really fucking good Die Hard film. So that's absolutely fine. Any other business before we wrap this up?
Well, just as always, feel free to drop us a line wherever you are. Text us on the new texting app on the podcast. We will read it out on the show like we always do. But just let us know what you think, and are you looking forward to Die Hard as much as we are? Because apparently, very much so. Very much so.
I think that's fine.
Yeah,
I think that's
fine.
Do. Okay, I've been Liam. He's been Rob, and you have been listening to the Hey Guys podcast. Cheers, guys. Catch you there. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.
Oh, and before I forget, where can folk reach us if they were so inclined to?
Well, you can actually reach us on Hey You Guys 80s at Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. But if you want to send us a mail, do heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Send us in your recommendations. Send us in your thoughts about any of the episodes. Just literally talk to us. We'll have a one-sided talk with you on the podcast.
Yeah. We're nice folk. Get in touch. But no, cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.